He was a billionaire with everything. She was a poor mechanic in a wheelchair with nothing. Their love was never supposed to work. But when their paths crossed, they moved mountains. This story will show you the true power of love in the face of the unthinkable. Click the like button as we proceed. The road stretched endlessly, a dry, stubborn ribbon of earth that refused to be tamed. Each passing vehicle stirred up clouds of red dust that hung in the air long after the engines had faded into the distance. It clung to everything: skin, clothes, tools, settling like a constant reminder of the life Ada lived. Ada adjusted herself slightly in her wheelchair, the metal frame letting out a soft creak beneath her. She didn't notice it anymore. The sound had become as familiar to her as her own breathing. What she did notice was the heat. The sun burned high above, relentless and unforgiving, pressing down on her shoulders like a weight. Sweat gathered at her temples, sliding slowly down her face, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. Spread neatly before her was a worn piece of cloth, once bright blue but now faded and stained with oil and time. On it lay her tools: spanners, screwdrivers, pliers, each carefully arranged, each carrying its own story. To anyone else they were just tools. To Ada they were survival. A battered motorcycle sat in front of her, its engine partially dismantled. The owner, a young man no older than 20, stood nearby, watching her with a mix of impatience and curiosity. "You sure you can fix it?" he asked, skepticism thick in his voice. Ada didn't look up. Her hands moved steadily, confidently, tightening a bolt with practiced ease. "If I couldn't," she replied calmly, "I wouldn't be here." The young man shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't the first time she had heard that question. It wouldn't be the last. People always doubted her, not because she lacked skill, but because of what they saw, or rather what they thought they saw. A woman, in a wheelchair, on the side of a dusty road. To them, she was a contradiction. To herself, she was proof. Proof that life could break you, and still fail to defeat you. Ada had not always lived this life. There was a time, long ago now, when she ran, when her legs carried her freely through open fields, when laughter came easily, when the world had not yet shown her its cruelty. But that was before the accident, before the whispers, before the pitying looks that followed her everywhere like a shadow she could never escape. She remembered the day everything changed. The screech of tires, the sharp, violent impact, the silence that followed. And then, darkness. When she woke up in the hospital, the first thing she noticed was the stillness. Her body felt wrong, heavy, unresponsive. She tried to move her legs. They didn't move. Panic rose in her chest, fast and suffocating. "Doctor," she had whispered, her voice trembling, "why can't I feel my legs?" The doctor's expression had said everything before his words did. "I'm sorry." 2 words. Simple. Devastating. Her world had ended in that moment. Or so she thought. The young man's voice pulled her back to the present. "Is it done yet?" Ada blinked, refocusing. "Almost," she said. She tightened the final bolt, wiped her hands on a rag, and gave a small nod. "Try it." The young man climbed onto the motorcycle, turning the ignition. For a brief second, nothing happened. Then, the engine roared to life. Smooth, steady, alive. His face lit up instantly. "Ah, it's working." Ada allowed herself a small smile. "Of course it is." He reached into his pocket, pulling out some crumpled notes and handing them to her. She counted quickly, then handed some back. "That's too much." The young man frowned. "But I charge for the work I do," she said firmly. "Not for what you think I need." There was no anger in her voice, just quiet dignity. The young man hesitated, then slowly nodded, taking the extra money back. "Thank you," he said, this time with genuine respect. Ada gave a slight nod. "Drive safe." He rode off, leaving behind a trail of dust that briefly swallowed the world before settling again. Silence returned. Ada leaned back slightly, exhaling. Another job done. Another day survived. Business was unpredictable. Some days, she worked from morning till night, her hands never still. Other days, like today, stretched long and empty, filled with waiting. Waiting for the next customer. Waiting for the next opportunity. Waiting for life to move forward. She glanced down the road, squinting slightly against the sun. Nothing. Just the endless stretch of red earth and the occasional distant movement. She reached for her water bottle, taking a small sip. It was warm, Everything was warm. Even the air felt heavy. Still she stayed, because leaving meant missing a chance. And chances were rare. A low, unfamiliar sound broke through the quiet. Ada's head lifted instantly. Her ears had become trained over the years, able to recognize the subtle language of engines. This one was struggling. She narrowed her eyes, focusing on the road ahead. A sleek black SUV appeared in the distance, moving slowly, unevenly. Even from afar she could tell something was wrong. The engine sputtered, coughed, then jerked forward again. Ada straightened slightly in her chair. "Come on," she murmured under her breath. The vehicle drew closer, the problem becoming more obvious with each passing second. Then finally, it stopped, just a few meters away from her. Silence followed. Thick, heavy, the kind of silence that comes after something gives up. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Ada's eyes studied him carefully. He was tall, well-built, dressed in a crisp, expensive suit that didn't belong on a road like this. His shoes alone probably cost more than everything she owned. He looked around, clearly out of place. Frustration flickered across his face as he pulled out his phone, checking for signal. Nothing. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Then, his eyes landed on her. Ada didn't look away. She was used to this moment. That first look. The pause. The surprise. Sometimes curiosity. Sometimes doubt. Sometimes outright dismissal. This time it was shock. His gaze lingered on her wheelchair, then moved to her tools, then back to her face. Ada tilted her head slightly. "Engine problem?" she asked. Her voice was calm, neutral, unbothered. The man hesitated. For a brief moment it seemed like he might say something else, something dismissive, but instead, he nodded. "Yes." Ada gestured toward the car with a small movement of her hand. "Open the bonnet." He blinked, as if surprised by the authority in her tone. But he obeyed. As the hood lifted, Ada wheeled herself closer, her movements smooth and practiced. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes scanning the engine. Her entire demeanor changed. Focused, sharp. Gone was the woman people pitied. In her place stood a professional. Her fingers moved lightly across different parts, listening, observing, understanding. The man watched her closely. His earlier doubt slowly began to fade, replaced by something else. Something he didn't quite understand yet. Ada didn't notice, or perhaps she did and simply didn't care. After a moment she spoke. "You've been driving it like this for a while." It wasn't a question. The man frowned. "Yes, how did you?" She pointed at a section of the engine. "This didn't just happen today." He stared at her, impressed. "You can fix it?" he asked. Ada finally looked up at him, one eyebrow slightly raised. "If I couldn't," she said, echoing her earlier words, "I wouldn't be here." Something shifted in that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, powerfully. The man, Obinna, though she did not yet know his name, felt it. For the first time that day, he wasn't thinking about his broken car. He was thinking about her. And Ada? She simply reached for her tools. Because for her, this was just another job. She had no idea that this moment, this dusty roadside encounter, was about to change her life forever. The engine ticked faintly as heat rose from beneath the hood, carrying with it the sharp scent of oil and metal. Obinna stood still, one hand resting on the edge of the open bonnet. His mind caught somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. He had seen many things in his life. Boardrooms filled with powerful men. Multimillion-naira deals sealed with handshakes. Luxury cars lined up like trophies in his father's mansion. But this was different. Because nothing in his world had prepared him for her. Ada leaned forward slightly in her wheelchair, her brows drawn together in concentration. The sun caught the fine beads of sweat on her forehead, but she didn't wipe them away this time. She didn't seem to notice anything except the engine. Her fingers moved with quiet precision, touching, testing, adjusting. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careless. It was deliberate. Obinna found himself watching her hands. There was something oddly captivating about the way she worked. No hesitation. No uncertainty, just confidence. "Pass me that spanner," she said suddenly, without looking up. Obinna blinked. "Sorry." She tilted her head slightly toward her toolcloth. The 12mm spanner, beside the screwdriver. Her tone wasn't rude, but it wasn't polite either. It was direct, used to being obeyed. For a brief second, Obinna almost smiled. No one spoke to him like that. Not employees. Not strangers. Not even his friends. But here she was treating him like an assistant. And strangely, he didn't mind. He reached down, picked up the tool and handed it to her. "Thank you," she said, still focused on the engine. No glance. No extra acknowledgement. Just work. Obinna slipped his hands into his pockets, studying her more closely now. Who was she? How did she learn this? Why was she here instead of somewhere better? Questions crowded his mind, but none of them seemed appropriate to ask. Instead, he said, "What exactly is wrong with it?" Ada tightened something, then paused. "Fuel delivery issue," she replied. He frowned slightly. "Meaning?" She exhaled softly, as though deciding whether to explain. Then she spoke. "Your engine isn't getting enough fuel to function properly. Something's blocking or limiting the flow." She tapped a component lightly. "Here." Obinna leaned in slightly. "You can tell just by looking?" Ada finally glanced up at him. Not impressed. Not amused. Just steady. "Not just looking," she said. "Listening." That answer lingered. Listening. As if the engine had a voice and she understood its language. There was a silence that followed. But it wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. Obinna found himself shifting his weight slightly, his gaze drifting briefly down the empty road before returning to her. "I didn't expect," he began, then stopped. Ada didn't ask him to finish. She already knew. "I know," she said simply. Her voice held no bitterness, no irritation, just acceptance. "You didn't expect someone like me to fix your car." Obinna felt a flicker of discomfort. "That's not what I meant." Ada gave a small, almost invisible shrug. "It usually is." Her hands continued moving as she spoke. Effortless. Unbothered. As if she had had this conversation 100 times before, and long stopped caring about the outcome. Obinna opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. Because the truth was, she wasn't wrong. He hadn't expected it. But not because she was incapable. Because the world had taught him certain expectations. And she didn't fit into any of them. Yet here she was, breaking them without even trying. A sharp metallic click broke the silence. Ada leaned back slightly, inspecting her work. "Try it now," she said. Obinna hesitated. "That fast?" Ada raised an eyebrow. "Do you want it fixed or not?" He let out a quiet breath, walking around to the driver's seat. As he sat down, something felt different. He couldn't explain it. It was just a car. Just an engine. But suddenly it felt like more. He turned the key. For a split second, nothing. Then, the engine roared to life. Smooth. Steady. Perfect. Obinna's eyes widened slightly. He revved it gently. No struggle. No hesitation. It was as if the car had never broken down at all. He stepped out slowly, closing the door behind him. Ada was already cleaning her hands with a rag. "You're good," he said. It wasn't a compliment thrown carelessly. It was genuine. Ada didn't smile, but something softened in her expression. "I know," she replied. And for the first time, Obinna laughed. Not loudly, but enough to surprise himself. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a thick bundle of cash. He didn't count it, didn't think about it. He simply extended it toward her. "Take it." Ada looked at the money, then at him, then back at the money. She took it calmly, counting quickly with practiced fingers. Then she separated a portion and handed the rest back. "That's too much." Obinna frowned. "It's fine." Ada shook her head. "No." Her tone was firmer now. "I charge for the work I do, not for your generosity." There was no arrogance in her voice, just principle. Obinna studied her for a moment. Then slowly he took the money back. That was new. Very new. People didn't refuse his money. They didn't reduce it. If anything, they asked for more. But her? She set her value and stood by it. "What's your name?" he asked. Ada hesitated for a brief second. Then, "Ada." He nodded. "I'm Obinna." She didn't react. No widened eyes. No sudden respect. No shift in attitude. Just a simple nod. "All right." Obinna wasn't sure why that amused him, but it did. He glanced at his car, then back at her. "You've been doing this long?" "Long enough," she replied. He almost asked more. Almost. But something about her made him pause. She didn't seem like someone who appreciated unnecessary questions. Or maybe, she was someone who had answered too many already. A breeze passed through, carrying dust with it. Ada squinted slightly, adjusting her position. Obinna noticed how naturally she moved in her wheelchair. No struggle, no hesitation. It wasn't something she was trapped in. It was something she had mastered. That realization settled deeply in his chest. "Thank you," he said again. This time it sounded different, more sincere. Ada gave a small nod. "Drive safe." Obinna walked back to his car, but something held him there for a second. He glanced at her again. She had already moved on, rearranging her tools, preparing for the next job, as if he, and everything about him, didn't matter. And that was what unsettled him the most. He got into his car and drove off. But his mind didn't leave. It stayed behind, on that dusty road, with a woman who refused to be defined by anything except her skill. Minutes passed, then 10, then 20, and still, Obinna couldn't shake the feeling. At a traffic stop, he tapped his fingers lightly against the steering wheel, then stopped, then tapped again. Restless, unfocused. This wasn't like him. He was a man of control, precision, clear decisions. But now, his thoughts were scattered, and all of them led back to one person, Ada. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "It's nothing," he muttered to himself. "Just a mechanic. Just a moment. That's all it was." But deep down, he knew that wasn't true, because for the first time in a long time, someone had treated him like he was ordinary, and instead of feeling insulted, he felt seen. Back on the dusty roadside, Ada picked up another tool, her movement steady as ever. But for just a brief moment, she paused, her gaze drifting toward the direction the car had disappeared. Then she shook her head slightly, and continued working, because for her, he was just another customer, or at least, that's what she told herself. The road looked exactly the same, dusty, quiet, unchanging, but somehow, it didn't feel the same to Obinna. He slowed his car as he approached the familiar stretch, his fingers tightening slightly around the steering wheel. He told himself he was just passing through, that this route was convenient, that there was no deeper reason for being here. But even he didn't believe that. His eyes scanned ahead, and there she was, exactly where he had left her. Ada sat in her usual spot, her wheelchair angled slightly toward the road, tools spread neatly beside her. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over everything, making the dust shimmer faintly in the air. She was working on a small generator this time, her hands moving with that same quiet confidence he hadn't been able to forget. For a moment, Obinna didn't move. He just watched. It was strange. In his world, everything was fast. Decisions, deals, movement, noise. But here, everything slowed down. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he liked it. A horn blared behind him. Obinna blinked, realizing he had been sitting in the middle of the road longer than necessary. He quickly drove forward, pulling over a short distance away. His heart was beating slightly faster than usual. He noticed, and immediately frowned. "Why?" he muttered under his breath. He turned off the engine. Silence filled the car. For a second he considered leaving, just starting the car again and driving off like this had never happened. But instead, he opened the door. Ada didn't look up immediately. She had already heard the car, recognized the sound. Not the engine, but the hesitation. A vehicle that stopped without urgency. That usually meant one of two things: a customer, or trouble. She tightened one last screw before finally lifting her head. And there he was, standing there like he had every reason to be. Well-dressed, composed, out of place. Again. Ada blinked once, then narrowed her eyes slightly. "You again?" There was no warmth in her tone, no excitement, just pure, unfiltered suspicion. Obinna almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he slipped his hands into his pockets. "My car is fine," he said. Ada raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" Straight to the point. No small talk. No pretending. Obinna hesitated, because suddenly, he didn't have a good answer. He started, then stopped. Ada crossed her arms slightly, waiting, unimpressed, unmoved. "I wanted to say thank you properly," he finished. Ada stared at him for a long second. Then, she let out a small, dry laugh. "Properly?" Her gaze flicked briefly to his car. "Your car is working." "It is. You paid me." "I did." She looked back at him. "So, what exactly is missing?" Obinna exhaled quietly. That question landed harder than he expected. Because the truth? He didn't know. I don't know, he admitted. That answer surprised her. Ada tilted her head slightly, studying him more carefully now. People like him didn't say, I don't know. They usually had answers. Confidence. Certainty. But this was different. She murmured. Then she turned back to her work. If you don't know, I can't help you. Obinna blinked. That wasn't the response he expected. Wait. Ada didn't look up. I'm working. And just like that, he was dismissed. For a brief second, Obinna stood there, unsure of what to do. No one ignored him like this. No one brushed him aside. But instead of feeling offended, he felt something else. Amusement. You always treat your customers like this? He asked. Ada picked up another tool. Only the ones who don't need help. Obinna let out a quiet laugh. Fair. He glanced around, noticing the lack of other customers. You're not busy. Ada didn't miss a beat. I'm still working. Another silence fell between them, but this one felt different. Less tense. More curious. Obinna stepped a little closer, careful not to invade her space. What are you fixing? He asked. Ada paused briefly, then answered. Generator. Can I see? She glanced up at him. For a moment it looked like she might refuse. Then she shrugged slightly. If you want. Obinna crouched beside her, his expensive trousers brushing against the dusty ground. He didn't seem to care. And that, Ada noticed. She shifted slightly, giving him a better view. This part is worn out, she explained, pointing. It affects the ignition. Obinna leaned in, genuinely paying attention. And you can fix it? For now, she said. But it will need replacement eventually. There it was again. That clarity. That honesty. She didn't oversell. Didn't exaggerate. Just facts. You're very straightforward, he said. Ada glanced at him briefly. Life is easier that way. Obinna nodded slowly. He believed that. Or at least, he wanted to. A light breeze passed, lifting a bit of dust into the air. Without thinking, Obinna reached out and held down the edge of her tool cloth before it could flip. Ada noticed. And this time, she paused. It was such a small thing. But it wasn't necessary. He didn't have to do it. He wasn't gaining anything from it. Thank you, she said quietly. Obinna looked at her. And for the first time, there was a hint of softness in her voice. You're welcome, he replied. They worked in silence for a while after that. Not together, but not separately either. Obinna found himself watching her again. Not in the obvious way, but in the details. The way she adjusted her position effortlessly. The way her hands moved without wasted motion. The way her face shifted slightly when she was concentrating. You've been doing this long, he said after a while. Ada didn't look up. Yes. How did you learn? She tightened something, paused, then continued. Life taught me. Obinna frowned slightly. That's not an answer. Ada glanced at him. It's the only one you're getting. He raised his hands slightly in surrender. All right, but the curiosity didn't leave him. If anything, it grew. Do you always work here? He asked. Yes. Every day. Most days. Obinna nodded slowly, then asked the question he had been holding back. Don't you ever want a more? Ada stopped. Completely. The air shifted. Subtle, but noticeable. She slowly turned her head toward him, her expression unreadable. What do you mean by more? Obinna hesitated, because suddenly, he realized how that sounded. I mean something bigger, he clarified. A shop, a business, expansion. Ada held his gaze for a long moment. Then, she looked away. I want many things, she said quietly. Her hands resumed moving. But wanting doesn't always change reality. That answer stayed with him, long after she said it. For the first time, Obinna saw it clearly. Not just her strength, but the weight she carried. The quiet acceptance. The things she didn't say. And something inside him shifted again. Deeper this time. A customer approached from the distance. Ada noticed immediately. Your visit is over, she said. Obinna blinked. That's it. Ada gave a small shrug. You said your car is fine. He exhaled, shaking his head slightly. You're not easy to talk to. Ada almost smiled. Almost. Then stop trying so hard, she said. Obinna stood up slowly, brushing dust off his clothes. He looked at her one last time. Will you be here tomorrow? Ada didn't answer immediately. Then, yes. He nodded. Good. She frowned slightly. Why? Obinna paused, then smiled faintly. I might need help again. Ada's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't argue. Then make sure your car actually has a problem, she said. Obinna chuckled. I'll try. He walked back to his car, but this time, he didn't feel restless, because now, he had a reason to return. And Ada? She watched him leave, just for a second longer than necessary. Then she shook her head lightly, and turned back to her work. But something had changed. She felt it, even if she refused to name it, because for the first time in a long time, someone had come back, not out of need, but out of choice. And that was far more dangerous. The morning came with a softer sun, not as harsh, not as unforgiving, but the dust was still there, always there. Ada arrived earlier than usual. She told herself it was because she had more work to do, because mornings were cooler, because it made sense. But deep down, she knew that wasn't the real reason. She adjusted her position, spreading her tools carefully over the familiar worn cloth. Everything was in place. Everything was the same, yet something felt different. Her eyes drifted to the road. Empty. She exhaled quietly. Good, she muttered, as if she had expected something else. She picked up a wrench and focused on the small engine in front of her. But her concentration wasn't as sharp as usual. Her mind kept wandering, back to yesterday, to his voice, to his questions, to the way he looked at her, not with pity, not with doubt, but with something she didn't quite understand. Ada tightened a bolt a little harder than necessary, then stopped, shook her head slightly. This is nonsense, she murmured, and forced herself back into the rhythm of work. Hours passed. Customers came and went. A motorcycle, a generator, a small car with a stubborn ignition problem. Each one fixed. Each one handled with the same quiet confidence. But still, she noticed the road. And then, she heard it. That engine. Ada didn't look up immediately. She didn't need to. She recognized it now. The car slowed. Stopped. She let out a small breath she didn't realize she was holding. Then finally, she looked up. Obinna stepped out of the car, dressed more simply this time. Still neat, still unmistakably refined, but less distant. Ada raised an eyebrow. You again. Obinna smiled slightly. Good morning. Ada didn't return the smile. Is your car broken today? Obinna paused. Then, yes. Ada's eyes narrowed immediately. She glanced at the car, then back at him. Open it. Obinna walked to the front and lifted the bonnet. Ada wheeled herself closer, her expression focused. She leaned forward, scanning the engine. Her hands moved lightly across familiar parts. Then, she stopped. Silence. Slowly, she leaned back, and looked at him. There's nothing wrong with your car. Obinna didn't respond immediately. Ada crossed her arms. You lied. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Obinna exhaled softly. Yes. Ada stared at him for a long moment. Then, she shook her head. You wasted my time. She turned her wheelchair slightly, ready to move away. I wanted to see you, Obinna said. That stopped her. Not dramatically, not instantly, but enough. Ada didn't turn back immediately. Her hands rested still on the wheels, her expression unreadable. That's not a good reason, she said after a moment. Obinna stepped closer. Maybe not, he admitted. But it's the truth. Ada turned slowly to face him now. Her eyes searched his face carefully, as if trying to find something hidden beneath his words. Why? She asked. The question was simple, but heavy. Obinna hesitated, because for once, he didn't have a calculated answer. I don't know, he said. Ada frowned slightly. You don't know why you came back? Obinna shook his head slowly. I just did. That answer lingered between them. Strange. Incomplete. But honest. Ada studied him for another moment. Then, she sighed quietly. You're a very confusing person, she said. Obinna let out a small laugh. I've been told that before. Ada almost smiled. Almost. She turned back to her tools. If you're not here for work, don't distract me. Obinna didn't leave. Instead, he stayed. And after a few minutes, he sat down. On the dusty ground. Ada noticed immediately. Her hands paused mid-motion. She glanced at him, then at his clothes, then back at him. You'll stain that, she said. Obinna shrugged. It's just clothes. Ada looked at him for a second longer than necessary. Then, she returned to her work. But something had shifted again. "Why are you really here?" she asked after a while. Obinna leaned back slightly, resting his hands behind him. The sun warmed his face, but he didn't seem to mind. "I told you," he said. "I wanted to see you." Ada shook her head. "That's not enough." Obinna looked at her. "And what would be enough?" Ada didn't answer immediately. She tightened something, adjusted another. Then, she spoke. "People like you don't come back for no reason." Obinna tilted his head slightly. "People like me?" Ada finally looked at him fully. "Yes." She gestured lightly toward him. "Your clothes. Your car. The way you talk." Her voice softened slightly. "You don't belong here." The words weren't meant to insult. They were simply true. Obinna nodded slowly. "Maybe not." Ada frowned. "Then why are you here?" This time, he had an answer. "Because you are." The air stilled. Ada's grip tightened slightly on her tool. That was unexpected. She looked away quickly, focusing back on the engine. "You talk too much," she muttered. Obinna smiled. "And you don't talk enough." Ada almost laughed. Almost. Silence settled again. But now, felt different. Warmer. Softer. After a while Obinna spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" Ada sighed. "You've been asking since yesterday." He chuckled. "Fair enough. Then, were you always a mechanic?" Ada froze. Not completely. Not obviously. But enough. Her hands slowed. Her expression changed. Just slightly. "No," she said quietly. Obinna noticed immediately. The shift. The hesitation. "What changed?" he asked gently. Ada didn't respond. Seconds passed. Then, she put down her tool, and leaned back slightly. For the first time, she wasn't working. "There was an accident," she said. Her voice was calm, but distant. Obinna sat up slightly, his attention fully on her now. "I lost the use of my legs," she continued. No drama, no emotion, just fact. But somehow, that made it heavier. "I couldn't go back to what I used to do," she added. "So I learned something else." Obinna felt something tighten in his chest. "You taught yourself?" he asked. Ada nodded. "How?" She shrugged slightly. "Watching, asking, trying, failing." Then she looked at him. "And trying again." Obinna held her gaze. And for the first time, he saw it fully. Not just strength, not just resilience, but survival. Pure, unfiltered. "You make it sound easy," he said. Ada shook her head. "It wasn't." A small pause. Then, "But I didn't have a choice." That sentence settled deeply between them. Obinna leaned back slightly, exhaling. In his world, there were always choices, options, backups, safety nets. But her world? It was different. And for the first time, he truly understood that. After a while, Ada spoke again. "What about you?" Obinna blinked. "Me?" Ada nodded. "You ask questions. Answer one." He smiled slightly. "All right." She waited. Obinna looked out at the road briefly, then back at her. "I grew up with everything," he said. Ada didn't react. She simply listened. "Money, comfort, opportunities," he continued. Then, he paused. "But none of it felt like mine." Ada's eyes shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked. Obinna exhaled. "My life was planned before I even understood it," he said. "What I would study, who I would become, even," he hesitated slightly, "who I would marry." Ada frowned. "That's not normal." Obinna gave a small, humorless smile. "In my world, it is." Silence followed. Two people, two completely different lives. And yet, somehow sitting in the same space. Ada looked at him for a long moment. Then, she nodded slightly. "That sounds exhausting." Obinna laughed softly. "It is." For a while neither of them spoke. But neither of them felt the need to leave. Because for the first time, they weren't just strangers. They were two people, beginning to understand each other. And somewhere in between, something fragile, something new, was beginning to grow. The day began like any other. But it didn't feel like it. Ada noticed it the moment she woke up. There was a strange restlessness sitting in her chest. Quiet, persistent, impossible to ignore. She tried to shake it off. Tried to convince herself it was nothing. Just another morning. Just another day on the roadside. But something in her refused to settle. She arrived at her usual spot earlier than usual. her wheels leaving faint tracks in the dry earth behind her. The air was still cool, the sun only beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light across the road. For a brief moment, everything felt peaceful. Then her thoughts returned. Obinna, his voice, his questions, the way he listened, the way he saw her. Ada exhaled sharply. "This is foolish," she muttered. She had met people before. Kind people, interesting people. But none of them had stayed in her thoughts like this. None of them had returned. And that was the problem. He had returned. Again. And again. Not for work. Not for necessity. But for her. Ada tightened her grip on her tools slightly. She didn't like that. Didn't like how it made her feel. Because feelings came with expectations. And expectations led to disappointment. She shook her head and focused on her work. Hours passed. The road grew busier. Customers came and went. And slowly, the unease began to fade. Until a voice broke through the afternoon noise. Ada, her hands froze. She knew that voice. Slowly, she turned. But it wasn't him. It was Chinedu, a regular customer. Loud, talkative, always full of stories no one asked for. Ada relaxed slightly. "What is it?" she asked. Chinedu grinned, holding up his phone. "You didn't tell me you know big people." "Oh." Ada frowned. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer, excitement practically radiating off him. "This man, this Obinna. You day fix his car ABI?" The name hit her instantly. Her chest tightened. "Yes," she said slowly. "Why?" Chinedu's grin widened. "Why? You know who he be?" Ada's frown deepened. "No." Chinedu laughed loudly. "Ah, Ada, you day joke." He thrust the phone toward her. "CM well." Ada hesitated for a second. Then, she looked, and everything changed. Her eyes scanned the screen. A photo. Clear. Sharp. Undeniable. It was him. Obinna. But not the Obinna she knew. This one stood in a perfectly tailored suit, surrounded by cameras, reporters, flashing lights. Behind him was a massive building, glass, steel, wealth, power. The headline beneath the image read, "Young billionaire Obinna Okafor expands business empire." Ada's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of her wheelchair. "No," she whispered. Chinedu laughed again. "You mean you know no? That man na big man oh. Billionaire. One of the richest young men for this country." Ada didn't respond. She couldn't. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The car. The clothes. The confidence. The calmness. He didn't just belong to a different world. He owned it. "And you day fix him motor like say na normal customer," Chinedu continued, still amused. "Ada, you too much." Ada forced a small smile. But inside, everything was unraveling. Chinedu eventually left, still talking, still laughing. But his voice faded into the background. Because Ada wasn't there anymore. Her mind was somewhere else, replaying every moment, every conversation, every look. "You don't belong here," she had said that, and he had agreed. But he hadn't told her the truth. Not fully, not clearly. Her chest tightened. "Why?" she whispered to herself. "Why hide it? Why pretend? Why come back? Like he was just a normal man." The answer came quickly. Because he wanted to. Because he could. Because people like him had the luxury of choosing how they showed up in the world. Ada's jaw tightened. She didn't. Her reality was not something she could step in and out of. It was constant, unavoidable, real. And suddenly, what had felt genuine, felt different, felt like a game. The sound of a car approaching pulled her back. Her heart skipped. She knew that engine. Of course she did. It stopped. Silence followed. Then, the door opened. "Ada." His voice. The same. But now, it sounded different. She didn't look up immediately. She needed a moment. Just one. To steady herself. Then, she lifted her head. Their eyes met. And Obinna knew instantly. Something was wrong. Her expression had changed. The warmth. Gone. Replaced by something colder. Sharper. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Ada held his gaze. Then, she reached beside her, picked up the phone Chinedu had forgotten, and held it up. Obinna's eyes dropped to the screen, and everything became clear. He exhaled slowly. "So," Ada said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "You're a billionaire." It wasn't a question. Obinna looked back at her. "Yes." The word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. Ada nodded slowly. I see. Silence stretched between them. Obinna took a step closer. I wanted to tell you. When? She cut in. Her eyes locked onto his. When exactly were you planning to tell me? Obinna paused, because he didn't have a good answer. He started, then stopped. Ada let out a small, humorless laugh. Let me guess, she said. You were waiting for the right time? Her voice sharpened slightly. The perfect moment? Obinna shook his head. It wasn't like that. Ada leaned forward slightly. Then what was it like? There it was. The question he couldn't escape. I didn't want it to matter, he said finally. Ada blinked. Then, she laughed. But this time, there was no humor in it. You didn't want it to matter? She shook her head slowly. That's easy for you to say. Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it quickly. You get to choose when your money matters, she continued. When it shows. When it doesn't. Her hand tightened on the wheel of her chair. I don't have that choice. The words hit harder than anything else she had said. Obinna felt it. Deeply. I wasn't pretending, he said quietly. Ada looked at him. You were, she replied. Simple. Direct. Painfully true. You came here acting like you were just normal, she continued. Obinna frowned slightly. I am normal. Ada's eyes flashed. No, she said. You're not. The silence that followed was suffocating. You don't wake up worrying about your next meal, she said. You don't sit here all day hoping someone will come. You don't know what it feels like to be looked at and dismissed before you even speak. Each word landed like a blow. You don't get to call yourself normal, she finished. Obinna didn't argue, because he couldn't. Not after that. I just wanted you to know me, he said softly. Ada's expression faltered for just a second, but she caught herself. Then you should have told me the truth, she said. Her voice was quieter now, but somehow, more painful. Because now, she hesitated, then finished. I don't know what was real. That sentence broke something. Obinna stepped closer. It was all real. Ada shook her head. I don't know that. Her eyes met his again. And that's the problem. Silence fell. Long. Heavy. Unforgiving. Finally, Ada turned away. I have work to do, she said. Dismissal. Clear. Final. Obinna stood there for a moment longer, hoping she would look back. She didn't. So slowly, he turned, walked back to his car, and left. This time, the silence he left behind felt different. Not calm, but broken. Ada sat still long after he was gone. Her hands rested in her lap, unmoving. Her chest felt tight, her thoughts loud. She had wanted honesty, and now, she had it. But somehow, it hurt more than the lie, because now she knew. The man she had started to care about belonged to a world that could never truly include her. And no matter how much she tried to deny it, that truth changed everything. The house stood like a fortress. Tall gates, polished marble floors, walls that carried generations of wealth, power, and expectations. Obinna hadn't been back in days. And even now, as he stepped out of his car and handed the keys to the security guard, something about the place felt unfamiliar. Not because it had changed, but because he had. Welcome back, sir, the guard said respectfully. Obinna nodded absently. His mind wasn't here. It was somewhere else, on a dusty roadside, with a woman who now refused to look at him. He walked through the large doors, his footsteps echoing faintly in the vast space. Everything was spotless, ordered, controlled, just the way his parents liked it. Obinna! He stopped. His father stood at the far end of the room, dressed in a crisp traditional outfit, his presence commanding as always. Beside him was his mother, elegant, poised, her gaze already sharp with expectation. You're finally home, she said. Not relief, not warmth, just observation. Obinna walked forward slowly. I've been busy. His father gave a short nod. We know, that was all. But somehow, carried weight. His mother stepped closer, her eyes scanning him carefully. You look different. Obinna didn't respond. She tilted her head slightly. Where have you been spending your time? There it was, the question behind all the others. Obinna met her gaze. Working. His father's voice cut in. And outside of work? Silence. Obinna exhaled slowly. He wasn't here to lie. Not anymore. I've been seeing someone, he said. The room stilled. His mother's expression didn't change immediately, but her eyes did. Seeing someone? She repeated. Obinna nodded. His father's gaze sharpened. Who? There was no point delaying it. Her name is Ada. A pause. Then, his mother smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a happy one. Controlled one. That's interesting, she said. Obinna frowned slightly. Why? She glanced at his father briefly, then back at him. Because, she said carefully, we have already chosen someone for you. The words landed like a stone. Obinna went still. What? He said quietly. His father stepped forward. You're at the stage in your life where certain decisions must be made, he said. Calm, firm, final. And marriage is one of them. Obinna stared at him. You already chose someone? He repeated. His mother nodded. She is from a respectable family, she said. Educated, elegant, well-raised. Each word felt deliberate, measured. She understands our world, his father added. There it was again. Our world. Obinna felt something tighten in his chest. I'm already seeing someone, he said. His mother's expression hardened slightly. Yes, she said. This Ada. The way she said the name, careful, detached. Obinna's eyes narrowed. You know about her. His father let out a quiet breath. We know enough. Silence. Obinna already knew. He wasn't going to like what came next. She is not suitable, his mother said. The words were soft, but sharp. Obinna's jaw tightened. Based on what? His father didn't hesitate. Everything. That single word carried judgment. Finality. Obinna took a step forward. You don't even know her. His mother's gaze didn't waver. We know she is not from our class, she said. There it was. Not hidden. Not softened. Just truth. And we know, his father added, that she is physically disadvantaged. Obinna's hands clenched slightly. You mean she's in a wheelchair? His mother didn't respond, but her silence said enough. That changes nothing, Obinna said firmly. His father's expression darkened slightly. It changes everything. The air grew heavier. She cannot stand beside you in the life you are meant to live, his father continued. She already does, Obinna replied. His voice was steady, unshaken. His mother shook her head. You're being emotional. No, he said. I'm being honest. Silence. Then, his father spoke again. This is not just about you. Obinna let out a sharp breath. It never is it? His mother stepped forward. This family has a name, she said. A reputation. And I'm part of that family, Obinna replied. Yes, his father said. Which is why your choices affect more than just you. Obinna laughed quietly. But your choices don't affect me? That question lingered, unanswered, because they didn't need to answer it. To them, the answer was obvious. His mother's tone softened slightly. You will understand one day, she said. Obinna shook his head. No, he said. I understand now. Pause. Then, I'm not marrying someone you chose. The words were clear. Final. The room went silent. His father's gaze hardened completely now. This is not a suggestion. Obinna met his eyes. Neither is this. The tension snapped. You will not throw your future away for a mistake, his father said sharply. Ada is not a mistake. His voice didn't rise, but it carried something stronger. Conviction. His mother's composure cracked slightly. You barely know her, she said. Obinna didn't hesitate. I know enough. His father stepped closer now. And what exactly do you know? He demanded. Obinna held his ground. I know she's stronger than anyone I've ever met. I know she's honest. I know she didn't care who I was, only what I did. His voice softened slightly. And I know that when I'm with her. He paused. I feel like myself. That silence that followed was different. Even his parents felt it. But it didn't change their stance. His father straightened slightly. Then you have a choice. Obinna's chest tightened. He already knew what was coming. You can have your inheritance, his father said. Your position. Your future. Pause. Or, his mother finished it. You can have her. The words hung in the air, heavy, unforgiving. Obinna didn't speak immediately, because for the first time, this wasn't just about feelings. This was real. Everything he had ever known. On one side, and Ada. On the other. His mother stepped closer. You don't have to answer now, she said softly. But he did. Because the answer was already there. He looked at them, then said, I choose Ada. Silence. Absolute. His mother's face fell. His father didn't react immediately. Then, he nodded slowly. Then you have made your decision. The words felt like a door closing. Pack your things, his father continued. You will no longer have access to this house, or anything connected to it. Obinna didn't flinch. All right, that surprised them. Just slightly. His mother stepped forward again. Think carefully, she said. I have, he replied. Her voice softened. You will lose everything. Obinna looked at her, then said quietly, No. A small pause. I'm choosing everything. And with that, he turned and walked away, not rushed, not hesitant, certain, for the first time in his life, truly certain. And back on that dusty road, Ada sat in silence, unaware that somewhere far away, a man had just chosen her over everything he had ever known. The morning was unusually quiet, not the kind of quiet Ada was used to, the slow, dusty stillness of the roadside. This one felt heavier, as if something unseen was shifting. Ada adjusted the cloth beneath her tools, smoothing out the creases with careful hands. Her movements were steady, practiced, normal, but her mind wasn't. It had been days since she last saw him, days since the argument, days since the truth had come crashing down between them like something fragile that couldn't be repaired. She told herself it didn't matter, told herself it was better this way, cleaner, safer. People like him didn't stay, and even if they did, they didn't belong. Still, her eyes drifted to the road, again, and again. Then she sighed, annoyed at herself. This is pointless, she muttered. She picked up a wrench and focused on the motorcycle in front of her. A stubborn engine, one that required patience, precision, tension. Good. That was exactly what she needed. Something to distract her. The sun climbed higher. Customers came and went. Work filled her hands, but not her thoughts, because no matter how much she tried, there was a space, and she knew exactly who had left it there. Then, a shadow fell across the ground. Ada frowned slightly. Come back later, She stopped. Something felt different. She slowly looked up, and for a second, she didn't recognize him. Obinna stood in front of her, but not the Obinna she knew. No polished shoes, no crisp suit, no quiet, effortless wealth. Just a simple shirt, faded jeans, and a small travel bag slung over his shoulder. Dust clung to his clothes. His hair wasn't perfectly styled. His posture, less guarded, more human. Ada blinked. What happened to you? She asked before she could stop herself. Obinna let out a small breath. I left, he said. Ada frowned. Left where? He met her eyes. Home. Silence. The word hung between them. Heavy. Real. Ada searched his face, looking for something. A joke. A lie. A misunderstanding. She found none. You're serious, she said quietly. Obinna nodded. I chose you. The words hit her harder than anything else he had ever said. Ada's grip tightened on the wheel of her chair. Don't say that, she said quickly. Obinna frowned slightly. Why? Because you don't know what you're saying, she replied. Her voice wasn't harsh, but it carried urgency. You can't just walk away from your life like that. Obinna took a step closer. I already did. Ada shook her head. No, she said. You don't understand. Her chest rose and fell unevenly now. That's your family, your home, your future. Obinna's voice softened. And you're part of my future. Ada looked away immediately. That's not the same thing. It is to me. The simplicity of his answer made it harder to fight. Ada swallowed. You're going to regret this, she said. Obinna didn't hesitate. No, I won't. She laughed slightly, but there was no humor in it. You say that now, she said. But what happens when reality sets in? She gestured around them. This is my life. Her voice dropped slightly. This dust, this heat, this uncertainty. She looked back at him. Can you live like this? Obinna didn't answer immediately. He looked around. Really looked. At the road. At her tools. At the small space she occupied in a world that had never made room for her. Then, he nodded. Yes. Ada shook her head. No. Her voice broke slightly now. You don't get it. She leaned forward slightly. You didn't choose this life. I didn't either. But I had to accept it. Her eyes locked onto his. You're choosing it out of emotion. Obinna's gaze softened. Maybe, he said, then added. But I'm staying because of conviction. That word landed differently. Ada fell silent, because for the first time, she saw it. He wasn't confused. He wasn't impulsive. He was certain, and that scared her more than anything else. "What if I don't want this?" she asked suddenly. Obinna stilled. "Want what?" "This," she said. "This responsibility." Her voice dropped. "You choosing me over everything." Silence. Obinna studied her carefully now. "You think this is a burden?" he asked quietly. Ada hesitated. Then, "Yes." The word felt heavy, because it wasn't entirely true. But it wasn't entirely false either. Obinna nodded slowly. "Then let me carry it," he said. Ada blinked. "What?" "I made the choice," he continued. "So let me carry the weight of it." Her throat tightened slightly. "That's not how it works," she said. "Then teach me how it does." The sincerity in his voice. It was too much. Ada looked away again. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said. Obinna let out a small breath. "Or maybe I'm making it honest." That word again. Honest. Ada closed her eyes briefly, because deep down, she knew he wasn't lying, and that made it harder to push him away. "What are you going to do now?" she asked after a moment. Obinna shifted the bag on his shoulder. "I'll find somewhere to stay." Ada frowned. "You don't have anywhere?" He shook his head. "Not anymore." That reality settled heavily between them. For the first time, this wasn't just words. This was real. "You left everything," she said quietly. Obinna nodded. "Yes." Ada looked at him for a long moment. Then, she exhaled slowly. "There's a small place nearby," she said. Obinna blinked. "What?" "A rental," she continued. "Nothing special. But it's manageable." Obinna's expression softened. "You'd show me?" Ada hesitated, then nodded. "After I finish work." Obinna smiled slightly. "Thank you." Ada didn't respond, because she wasn't ready to acknowledge what that meant. Later that evening, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. Ada wheeled herself slowly down a narrow path, Obinna walking beside her. The area was quiet, simple, far from the life he had known. She stopped in front of a small building. "This is it," she said. Obinna looked at it. It wasn't impressive. Not large. Not luxurious. But it was real. He nodded. "It's perfect." Ada glanced at him. "You don't have to pretend." "I'm not." She studied his face carefully. Then, for the first time, she believed him. Days passed. Obinna settled into the small house. Life changed quickly. No drivers. No staff. No comfort waiting at his fingertips. Just effort. He learned how to cook. Badly. He learned how to clean. Slowly. He learned how to exist without everything being done for him. And through it all, he kept showing up. Every day. To the roadside. Not as a customer, but as someone who stayed. Who helped. Who tried. Ada watched him closely. Waiting. For regret. For frustration. For the moment he would realize what he had lost. But it didn't come. Instead, he adapted. And slowly, something inside her began to shift. Because this time, he didn't just say he chose her. He proved it. Every single day. And for the first time in her life, Ada felt something unfamiliar. Not survival. Not endurance. But something softer. Something dangerous. Hope. The first morning felt different. Not quiet. Not peaceful. But uncertain. Obinna woke up to the sound of a rooster crowing somewhere in the distance. He frowned slightly, eyes still closed, his body instinctively waiting for the familiar hum of an air conditioner. It didn't come. Instead, warm air filled the small room, heavy and still. His eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above him was plain. No intricate design. No chandelier. Just simple. Reality settled in. He was no longer in his father's mansion. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. For a moment he just sat there, thinking. Then, he exhaled. "No going back," he muttered. There was no regret in his voice. Just acknowledgement. He stood, stretching slightly before stepping outside. The compound was quiet. The morning light soft against the small buildings around him. This was his life now. And for the first time, he had to build it himself. Later that morning, he arrived at the roadside. Ada was already there, working on a car engine, her hands moving with focused precision. She didn't look up immediately. "You're late," she said. Obinna checked his wrist out of habit. "No watch." He almost smiled. I didn't know I had a schedule, he replied. Ada tightened something, then leaned back slightly. You do now. He nodded. All right. She glanced at him briefly. Did you eat? The question caught him off guard. Yes, he said. Then after a pause. Bread. Ada nodded. That's not enough. Obinna chuckled slightly. It's a start. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. The day began like any other. Customers came. Engines failed. Problems needed solving. But this time, Obinna stayed, not watching from the side, not observing from a distance, helping. First, he didn't know what he was doing. Pass me the wrench, Ada said. He picked up the wrong one. She sighed. No, the other one. He handed her another. Not that one either. Obinna paused, then held up a third. Ada glanced at it. That one. He smiled slightly. Progress. Hours passed. Obinna wiped sweat from his forehead. His shirt slightly stained with oil now. You're doing it wrong, Ada said without looking up. He frowned. I haven't even done anything yet. That's why it's wrong. He laughed. You're not very encouraging. Ada almost smiled. Do you want encouragement or do you want to learn? He raised his hands slightly. Teach me. And she did. Not gently, not slowly, but honestly. Hold it like this. No, not like that. You're forcing it. Stop. Listen to the engine. Obinna paused. Listen. Ada glanced at him. Yes. He frowned slightly. I don't hear anything. She shook her head. That's because you're not paying attention. She tapped the engine lightly. Every sound means something. Obinna leaned in, trying again. This time, he heard it. A faint, uneven rhythm. Oh, he said. Ada nodded. Exactly. Days turned into weeks. And slowly, things began to change. Obinna stopped hesitating, stopped guessing. He started understanding. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. You're improving, Ada said one afternoon. Obinna looked up, surprised. That sounded like a compliment. Ada shrugged. It was an observation. He smiled. I'll take it. But outside the roadside, things were harder, much harder. Obinna began reaching out to contacts, old connections, business associates. But this time, the responses were different, cold, distant, careful. We heard about your situation. Maybe this isn't the right time. Let's talk in the future. Doors that once opened easily, now stayed closed. One evening he sat outside his small home, his phone resting loosely in his hand. His jaw tightened slightly. They're avoiding me, he said. Ada, who sat nearby cleaning her tools, didn't look up. Of course they are. Obinna frowned. That's it. She shrugged. You left your father's influence, she said. They're not sure what you are without it. The words stung, but they were true. I'm still me, he said. Ada nodded. Yes, then added. But now they want proof. Silence. Obinna leaned back slightly, staring at the sky. How do I prove that? He asked. Ada paused, then said, Start small. He glanced at her. What do you mean? She set her tools aside. You don't build something big immediately, she said. You build something that works. Her voice was calm, steady. Fix one problem, she continued. Then another. Then another. Obinna listened. Before you know it, she looked at him. You've built something real. That stayed with him. The next day, he started differently. Instead of chasing big opportunities, he looked for small ones. A struggling transport business. A supplier with poor logistics. A mechanic shop lacking organization. Problems. Simple. Clear. And he solved them. Not with money, but with ideas. Structure. Effort. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. But it worked. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, things began to grow. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But steadily. Obinna began earning. Small amounts at first. Then more. Enough to sustain himself. Enough to build something. And through it all, Ada was there. Watching. Supporting. Challenging. You're thinking too big again, she said one evening. Obinna frowned. I have to think big. Ada shook her head. You have to build right. He exhaled. You're very stubborn. She almost smiled. So are you. Their lives became intertwined. Work. Conversations. Shared struggles. Simple meals. Long evenings. Quiet understanding. Obinna began to see things differently. Not through wealth. not through status, but through effort, through patience, through resilience. And Ada, she began to see something too, not just a man who chose her, but a man who was becoming something new, something stronger, because this time, he wasn't being handed a future, he was building one, with his own hands, and somehow, that made everything more meaningful, not just for him, but for her too, because for the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was part of something growing, something real, something that belonged to both of them, and deep down, she knew, this was only the beginning. The evening air was calm, not silent, not empty, but gentle. Ada sat outside her small home, her hands resting loosely in her lap as she watched the sky shift slowly from gold to deep orange. It was her favorite time of day, the moment when everything paused, when the noise softened, when the world felt less demanding. But lately, even this quiet felt different, because she wasn't alone in it anymore. Footsteps approached from behind. Familiar, steady. "You've been out here a while," Obinna said softly. Ada didn't turn immediately. "I like it here," she replied. Obinna stepped closer, stopping beside her. "I know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything they had been through, everything they had built, everything they had yet to say. Months had passed since Obinna walked away from his old life. Months of struggle, of learning, of building, and somehow, they had found a rhythm. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Obinna had grown into his new life in ways even he hadn't expected. His small business ventures were beginning to stabilize. Not massive, not empire level, but steady, respectable. His name, no longer carried by his father's shadow, was slowly beginning to stand on its own. And Ada had changed too. Not outwardly. She was still the same strong, focused woman on the roadside. Still sharp, still independent. But inside, something had softened. Not weakness, but openness. And that terrified her. "You're thinking again," Obinna said, breaking the silence. Ada sighed lightly. "I always think." He smiled. "You think too much." She glanced at him briefly. "And you don't think enough." He chuckled. "Maybe that's why this works." Ada didn't respond, because she didn't know if it did. Not completely. Not yet. Later that night, Ada sat alone inside her room, staring at nothing in particular. Her mind was restless again. But this time, it wasn't about him leaving. It was about him staying. About everything that had happened. Everything that had changed. And everything that might come next. She exhaled slowly. "Why does this feel so difficult?" she whispered. "Because it shouldn't be. He had chosen her, proven it, stayed, built something real. So why was she still holding back?" The answer came quietly. Because she was afraid. Not of him, but of losing him. Because now, he wasn't just someone passing through her life. He was part of it. And that made the risk greater. The next day, the roadside was busy. Engines, voices, movement. But Ada's focus wasn't as sharp as usual. She tightened a bolt. Too hard. "Careful," Obinna said beside her. Ada paused, then loosened it slightly. "I know," she said. Obinna studied her for a moment. "You're distracted." "I'm working." "That's not what I said." Ada sighed. "You're very observant." Obinna shrugged. "I pay attention." That again. He always paid attention. To things others missed. To things she tried to hide. Ada wiped her hands slowly. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She hesitated, then nodded. "What are we doing?" he asked. The question was simple, but it hit harder than anything else. Ada looked at him. "What do you mean?" Obinna held her gaze. "I mean this," he said. He gestured between them. "Us." Ada's chest tightened slightly. "We're living," she said. Obinna shook his head. "That's not an answer." Ada looked away. "It's the only one I have." Obinna stepped closer. "No," he said gently. "It's the safest one you have." That landed. Because it was true. Ada swallowed. "I don't know what you want me to say," she admitted. Obinna's voice softened. "I want you to be honest." Silence. Long. Heavy. Then, Ada spoke. "I'm afraid," she said. The words felt fragile. But real. Obinna didn't interrupt. "Everything is good now," she continued. Her voice trembled slightly. "And that's what scares me." She finally looked at him. I don't know how to trust something this good. Obinna's expression softened. He took another step closer. You don't have to trust it all at once, he said. Ada shook her head slightly. That's not how my life works. Then maybe it's time it changes. She let out a small breath. You say that like it's easy. Obinna smiled faintly. I didn't say it was easy. Pause. I just said it's possible. That night, Ada didn't sleep much. Her thoughts kept circling back to one thing. Possibility. Future. Not just survival. Not just getting through each day. But something more. Something lasting. Something she had never allowed herself to imagine. The following evening, Obinna found her alone again, watching the sky, thinking. He sat beside her quietly. No words, just presence. After a while, he spoke. Marry me. Ada froze. Completely. Her breath caught. What? She whispered. Obinna turned to her. I want to marry you. No hesitation. No doubt. Just truth. Ada's heart raced. You're serious? Yes. She shook her head slightly. You can't just say something like that. I just did. Ada almost laughed, but emotion caught in her throat instead. This isn't a small decision, she said. I know. You've already given up everything. And I'd do it again. Her eyes filled slightly. Why? She asked. Obinna held her gaze. Because loving you is the only thing that has ever felt completely right. Silence. Deep. Overwhelming. Ada looked away quickly, her chest tightening. I don't know how to be someone's wife, she admitted. Obinna's voice softened. Then we'll learn together. She shook her head. I don't know how to depend on someone. Then don't, he said. Ada frowned. What? Be with me, he clarified. Not because you need me. He reached for her hand gently. But because you choose me. That broke through. Because that was the first time someone had said it like that. Not pity. Not obligation. Choice. Ada's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide this time. You're not going to leave? She asked quietly. Obinna shook his head. No. Even when things get hard? They already have. And you're still here. Yes. Ada let out a shaky breath. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Obinna's expression softened completely. Okay. Ada looked at him. Yes. A small smile broke through her tears. I'll marry you. And in that moment, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, because for the first time, Ada wasn't just surviving life. She was choosing it. And she was choosing him. The morning air carried a different kind of energy. Not the heavy stillness Ada once knew. Not the uncertain tension of survival. This time, felt alive. Ada adjusted the sleeves of her clean, fitted jumpsuit, her reflection staring back at her from the small mirror mounted on the wall. The fabric was new, well-tailored, practical but refined. A far cry from the worn, oil-stained clothes she used to wear every day. She studied herself for a moment longer, then shook her head slightly. Still me, she murmured, and that mattered. Behind her, Obinna stepped into the room, buttoning the cuffs of his shirt. Simple, sharp, confident. Are you ready? He asked. Ada turned slightly, raising an eyebrow. For what? Obinna smiled. You forgot. She frowned slightly. No. He stepped closer, adjusting the collar of her jumpsuit gently. You're opening your shop today. Ada stilled. The words hit her softly, but deeply. My workshop, she corrected. Obinna nodded. Your workshop. A small smile tugged at her lips. Then yes, she said quietly. I'm ready. The building stood proudly at the corner of a busy street. Not massive, not overwhelming, but solid, clean, intentional. A sign hung above the entrance. Ada Auto Works. The letters gleamed under the morning sun. Ada sat just outside, her hands resting lightly on her wheels as she stared at it. For a moment, she said nothing, because words wouldn't capture it. This wasn't just a shop. It was proof. Proof of every struggle, every long day, every moment she refused to give up. Obinna stood beside her, watching her quietly. You built this, he said. Ada shook her head. We built this. He smiled. Fair. The opening was simple. No loud celebration. No unnecessary display. Just people. Real people. Customers who had known Ada from the roadside. Neighbors. Small business owners. And curiosity. A lot of curiosity. She has her own place now? That Obinna helped her. They said he used to be rich. No, he is rich. Whispers moved through the small crowd. Ada heard them, but for once, they didn't affect her, because she knew the truth. This was hers. The first customer arrived before noon. A middle-aged man with a faulty engine. Ada wheeled forward confidently. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked. He hesitated slightly, then smiled. "I heard you're the best." Ada raised an eyebrow. "You heard correctly." Obinna chuckled quietly from the side. And just like that, work began. Months passed. And the growth was undeniable. Ada Auto Works expanded quickly. Not because of luck, but because of reputation. She was good. Consistently good. Customers returned. They referred others. They trusted her. And slowly, her name spread. Meanwhile, Obinna was building too. Not loudly, not recklessly, but strategically. The small problems he had once solved had grown into structured systems. Logistics, supply chains, partnerships. He built companies that fixed inefficiencies others ignored. And because of that, they worked. They grew. His name began to circulate again. But this time, it was different. This time, it wasn't tied to his father. It was his. One evening, Obinna sat at the small dining table, papers spread out in front of him. Ada rolled in, wiping her hands with a cloth. "You're working late again," she said. Obinna glanced up. "Just finishing something." She moved closer, looking over the documents. "Another deal?" He nodded. "A big one." Ada studied his face. "You're nervous." Obinna smiled slightly. "Is it that obvious?" Ada shrugged. "Only to me." He leaned back slightly. "If this works." He paused. "It changes everything." Ada tilted her head. "Everything already changed." Obinna looked at her. "Not like this." Silence. Then, Ada reached out, placing her hand lightly over his. "Then make sure you're doing it for the right reason," she said. Obinna frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Ada held his gaze. "Not to prove something." Pause. "Not to them." He understood immediately. His father, his past, his old life. Obinna exhaled slowly. "I'm not," he said. Then, more quietly, "I'm doing it for us." Ada nodded. "Good." The deal went through, and everything shifted again. Not overnight, but significantly. Obinna's business expanded rapidly. New offices, new staff, new influence. But this time, he moved differently, carefully, intentionally, because he knew what it felt like to lose everything. One afternoon, a black car pulled up outside Ada's workshop. Different from before. Familiar, but distant. Ada noticed immediately. Her hands paused mid-motion. Obinna stepped out, dressed sharply, confident, powerful. For a brief moment, it felt like the past had returned. But then, he smiled, and walked toward her. The same man, just evolved. "You're staring," he said. Ada shook her head slightly. "I'm observing." He laughed. "Big difference." She smirked. "Very." He glanced around the workshop. "You've been busy." Ada nodded. "So have you." Their eyes met, and in that moment, they both understood something. They had grown, not apart, but together. Later that evening, they sat outside again. The same quiet, the same sky, but everything else, different. "You've built something incredible," Obinna said. Ada looked at him. "So have you." He shook his head slightly. "It's not just about the business." Pause. "It's about who we became." Ada leaned back slightly. "You sound reflective." He smiled. "I am." Silence settled. Then, Ada spoke softly. "Do you ever miss it?" Obinna glanced at her. "My old life." She nodded. He thought for a moment. Then, "No." Ada studied him. "Not even a little?" He shook his head. "Because this," he looked at her, "this is real." Ada's expression softened. And for the first time, she believed it completely. But far away, in a large, quiet mansion, two people sat in silence, watching, waiting, because news had reached them. Their son was no longer struggling. He was rising. And this time, without them. The call came in the middle of the afternoon. Ada was in the workshop, her hands deep inside an engine, her focus sharp as always. The steady hum of tools and low chatter of workers filled the space around her. Obinna stood nearby, reviewing a document on his tablet. occasionally glancing up as if drawn by habit to where she was. Then, his phone rang. He almost ignored it. Almost. Unknown number. But something made him pause. He answered. Hello. There was silence on the other end. Then, a voice he hadn't heard in months. Obinna. Everything inside him stilled. His grip tightened slightly around the phone. Mother, he said. Ada looked up immediately. She didn't hear the voice, but she saw his face. And that was enough. You need to come home, his mother said. Her voice was controlled. But underneath it, something was breaking. Obinna's chest tightened. What happened? A pause. Then, it's your father. The world seemed to slow. He's very sick. Silence. Obinna's mind raced. What kind of sickness? He asked. Another pause. Kidney failure. The words landed heavy. Cold. Final. He needs a transplant, she added. Obinna closed his eyes briefly. And? He asked quietly. His mother's voice dropped. He won't survive without it. The line went silent. For a moment, Obinna didn't speak, didn't move, because suddenly, everything he had left behind had found its way back. Come home, his mother said again. This time, there was no control left in her voice, only desperation. The call ended. Obinna stood still, phone still in his hand, eyes unfocused. Ada moved toward him slowly. What happened? She asked gently. He didn't respond immediately. Then, he's dying, he said. Ada's breath caught slightly. Your father. He nodded. Silence fell between them, heavy, unavoidable. What are you going to do? She asked. That question. It wasn't simple, because the answer wasn't simple. Obinna exhaled slowly. I don't know. And for the first time in a long time, that was true. The journey back felt longer than it should have. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but Obinna barely noticed it. His mind was elsewhere. Memories. Old ones. His father teaching him how to ride a bicycle. His father correcting him sharply when he made mistakes. His father standing tall, unyielding, always expecting more. Not a perfect man, but still, his father. Beside him, Ada sat quietly. She hadn't said much since they left, because she understood something. This wasn't a moment for words. This was a moment for choice. The gates opened slowly. The mansion stood just as it always had. Untouched, unchanged. But this time, it didn't feel powerful. Felt fragile. Obinna stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier here, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Inside, everything was quieter than usual. Staff moved softly. Voices were low. And at the center of it all, his mother stood waiting. She looked different. Not physically, but something in her posture had changed. Less rigid. Less controlled. More human. Obinna, she said. Her voice broke slightly. He stepped forward. How is he? He asked. She hesitated. Not good. That was enough. The hospital room was dim. Machines beeped steadily. And on the bed, the man who once seemed untouchable, now looked small, weak, human. Obinna stopped at the doorway. For a moment, he couldn't move, because this wasn't the man he remembered. This wasn't the man who had given him ultimatums, who had stood unshaken, certain of his power. This was someone else, someone fragile. Go, his mother whispered. Obinna stepped inside slowly, each step heavier than the last. He stopped beside the bed, and looked down. His father's eyes opened slowly. They met his. For a moment, there was no anger, no pride, just recognition. You came, his father said weakly. Obinna nodded. Yes. Silence followed. Then, his father exhaled slowly. I didn't think you would. Obinna's jaw tightened slightly. I'm still your son. Those words carried weight. More than anything else. His father's gaze shifted slightly. Then back. I was hard on you, he said. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was close. Obinna didn't respond. Because now, the past felt complicated, heavy, and unfinished. Later, the doctor spoke to them. The situation is critical, he said. His tone was professional, measured. He needs a kidney transplant urgently. Obinna stood still. Do you have a donor? The doctor asked. His mother shook her head. We've been searching, she said. But nothing has matched. Silence. Then, Obinna spoke. Test me. Both of them turned to him. What? His mother asked. Test me. he repeated. Her eyes widened. No. The word came quickly. You just got your life back, she said. You can't risk it. Obinna's voice remained calm. He's my father. His mother shook her head again. He didn't treat you like one. That hit. But it didn't change anything. That doesn't change who I am, Obinna said quietly. Silence. Deep. Unavoidable. Ada stepped forward slightly. She hadn't spoken until now. But her presence was steady, certain. Let him choose, she said softly. Obinna glanced at her. Their eyes met. And in that moment, he knew. She understood. Not just the situation, but him. The tests were done. Time stretched painfully. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. Until finally, the doctor returned. You're a match. Silence. His mother covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. No, she whispered. But this time, it wasn't refusal. It was fear. That night, Obinna sat alone outside the hospital. The city lights flickered in the distance. Ada joined him quietly. Neither of them spoke at first. Then, are you sure? She asked. Obinna nodded. Yes. Ada studied him. You don't have to do this. He looked at her. I know. Pause. But I want to. Her voice softened. Even after everything? Obinna exhaled slowly. Especially after everything. Silence. Then, he added, I don't want to carry anger anymore. That was it. Not obligation. Not guilt. Freedom. Ada's eyes softened. She reached for his hand. And held it. I'm here, she said. Obinna squeezed her hand gently. I know. The surgery was scheduled. The night before. The tension was unbearable. His mother barely slept. Ada stayed close. And Obinna, he remained calm. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he had already made his decision. The morning came. Bright. Unforgiving. He was wheeled into the operating room. And for the first time, his mother broke completely. Please, she whispered. He reached out slightly. I'll be fine. Then, he looked at Ada, and smiled. I told you, he said softly. She nodded, but her eyes said everything she couldn't. The doors closed, and time stood still. The waiting room felt endless. Time moved, but not in a way anyone could measure. Ada sat still, her hands clasped tightly together in her lap, her fingers occasionally tightening without her realizing it. Across from her, Obinna's mother paced slowly, her steps uneven, her composure long gone. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted to the doors, closed, silent, unyielding. Hours had passed, or maybe minutes. It was impossible to tell, because when fear takes over, time stops making sense. Ada exhaled slowly, trying to steady her breathing. She wasn't used to this kind of waiting, this kind of helplessness. Her life had always been about action, fixing, solving, doing. But this required stillness, faith, and it terrified her. She glanced at Obinna's mother. For the first time since she had known her, she didn't see authority. She didn't see judgment. She saw a woman, a mother, afraid of losing her son. That realization softened something in Ada. Not completely, but enough. You should sit, Ada said gently. Obinna's mother stopped pacing. She looked at her, really looked at her. For a moment, felt like the first time. Then slowly, she sat. Silence followed. But it wasn't hostile. Not anymore. It was shared. Heavy, but shared. The doors finally opened. Both women stood instantly. The doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. For a second, no one spoke, because the answer was written on his face. It was successful, he said. Everything released at once. A breath, a weight, a fear. Obinna's mother covered her face, tears spilling freely now. Thank you, she whispered. Ada closed her eyes briefly. Relief washed through her like a wave. But it didn't end there. They're both stable, the doctor continued. But recovery will take time. Ada nodded. That's enough, she said softly. And it was. The hours that followed were quieter, less tense, but still fragile. Ada was the first to see Obinna. He lay still on the hospital bed, machines surrounding him, his face pale but peaceful. For a moment, she didn't move, because seeing him like this, it hit differently. This wasn't the confident man who had walked away from everything. This wasn't the man who had stood beside her, building a life from nothing. This was someone vulnerable, and it broke something open inside her. She wheeled closer slowly. "Obinna," she whispered. His eyes opened slightly. Took him a moment to focus. Then, he saw her, and smiled. Weak, but real. "You're here," he murmured. Ada let out a soft breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Of course I am." He blinked slowly. "How did it go?" Ada leaned closer. "It worked," she said. His expression softened completely. Good. That was his first thought. Not himself. His father. Ada swallowed slightly. "You should rest," she said. Obinna nodded faintly, but before his eyes closed again, he whispered, "Stay." Ada didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere." Days passed. Recovery was slow, careful, but steady. Obinna regained strength gradually, and so did his father. The man who once seemed untouchable, now needed help to sit up, to move, to exist. And in that vulnerability, something shifted, not just in him, but in everything around him. The first time Obinna's father spoke to Ada alone, the room felt quiet in a different way. Not tense, not heavy, but uncertain. Ada wheeled in slowly. He was sitting upright now, supported by pillows, his face still weak, but his eyes clear. He watched her as she approached, not with judgment, not with dismissal, but with something else. Recognition. "You stayed," he said. Ada nodded. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to." Ada tilted her head slightly. "Yes, I did." He studied her. Then, for the first time, his voice softened. "I was wrong about you." The words were simple, but they carried everything. Years of pride, of assumptions, of distance. Ada didn't respond immediately, because she felt it, the weight of that apology. "I judged you without knowing you," he continued. His voice trembled slightly. "And I almost lost my son because of it." Silence. Deep. Then, he looked at her fully. "I'm sorry." No pride, no hesitation, just truth. Ada's chest tightened slightly, because she hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not ever. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, she nodded. "I forgive you." And just like that, something heavy lifted. Not completely, but enough. Later, when Obinna was strong enough, they sat together, all three of them, in the same room, for the first time, without conflict, without tension, without distance. Obinna looked between them. "You talked," he said. Ada nodded. "We did." His father exhaled slowly. "She's stronger than I thought," he admitted. Obinna smiled slightly. "I told you." His father shook his head. "You didn't tell me enough." They all laughed softly, and in that moment, felt real. Not forced, not fragile, just real. Weeks later, they returned home, but not to the same life, because everything had changed. Not just externally, but internally. His father was different, softer, more aware. His mother, warmer, more open. And Ada, she wasn't just accepted, she was welcomed. One evening, they all sat outside the large house, the same place where everything had once felt divided. Now, felt whole. Obinna leaned back slightly, his hand resting over Ada's. "You know," he said, "if this had happened before." He paused. "I don't think we would be here." Ada nodded. "We wouldn't." His father looked at them. "No," he said quietly. "You wouldn't." A small silence followed. Then, he added, "But I'm glad you are now." That meant everything. Years later, their story became something more. Not just a memory, not just a moment, but a legacy. Ada's workshop expanded into a full automotive company, training others, creating opportunities. Obinna's empire grew, not from inheritance, but from effort, vision, resilience, and together, they built something greater than either of them could have imagined. Not just wealth, but impact, because their story was never just about love. It was about choice, about standing firm when everything tries to break you, about building something real, from nothing, and proving that the greatest wealth in life is not what you inherit, but what you choose, and who you choose to build it with. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.